So let's talk about what makes up a cell. So something all cells have in common. So all cells have a plasma membrane. So this plasma membrane makes up the outer edge of the cell. So at the side it's kind of bumpy, and then it's going around here to the underside and then all the way back around. So this plasma membrane is made up of phospholipids, and it surrounds the entire outside of the cell. And then inside of the cell, we have cytoplasm. Cytoplasm is all of the fluid and all of the structures inside of the cell. So all cells have organelles, right? So that's these complex structures inside of the cell. A cytoskeleton, so you can see these kind of long lines here that make up the internal structure or the skeleton of the cell. Inclusions, so inclusions, things that are included inside the cell, or adhesions. And then the cytosol. So the cytosol is the actual fluid that fills this area. A lot of the times you're going to see cytosol and cytoplasm interchangeably, meaning just the fluid inside of the cell. So here's a little picture of the plasma membrane, right? So this is the edge of the cell, and this is blown up. So the plasma membrane is made up of what's called a bilayer. So that bi prefix means two. And so here's one layer of phospholipids, and here's another layer of phospholipids. So that's how we get 1, 2. And phospholipids, if you remember, belong to which group of macromolecules? It's in the name, right? They belong to lipids. And they were special. They were called amphipathic, right? They've got this head that likes water. It's called hydrophilic. And then they've got this tail region that doesn't like water. It's hydrophobic. So outside of a cell, that's this area up here, there's a lot of water. There's interstitial fluid between all of your cells. And inside of the cell, we have cellular fluid, right, the cytosol. Between those, in this little border region, there's no water. So this is kind of more of an oily substance, actually. So the areas that like water orient towards the water on the outside and the inside. And the regions on here that don't like water spend time in here, where it's hydrophobic. Some other things that you can see on a cell membrane, we have these purple proteins. This protein, right, goes from one side all the way through to the other side. It's called a transmembrane protein. It's going to have a region that likes water, a region that doesn't like water, and then a region that likes water. Sometimes we have peripheral proteins that are either on just the inside or just the outside. Those ones will be hydrophilic because they like water. The last molecule we're going to see in these membranes are the cholesterols. So this is a little steroid. If you remember that steroids belong to the lipids, and the one thing that all lipids had in common was they are hydrophobic. So it makes sense that these steroids would be in this center region that is hydrophobic. The function of a cell is determined by its plasma proteins, right? So the proteins on the outside of a cell membrane are how the cell is going to interact with the environment around it. So if I have a lot of channel proteins, I'm going to be able to allow ions to come in and out. If I have adhesion molecules, I'm going to be able to stick to the cells next to me, right? So the function of an entire cell is determined by what proteins are on that plasma membrane. So the plasma membrane is not always like a smooth edge. You saw in the first picture that it was kind of bumpy. So let's talk about some things that kind of come out of the plasma membrane here, some extensions. Microvilli. Micro means small. These are short projections, right? So these are microvilli over here on the right. And you can see that they're kind of bumpy. They come up and then down and then up and then down. What this does is it makes this plasma membrane really big, and it's going to increase the surface area. So cells that have stuff like this are usually for absorbing, like your intestinal lining is where you absorb your nutrients. It has microvilli so that you can absorb more over a relatively short space. Cilia, so over here we have some cilia, are short hair-like projections. What you can see is they come in little bunches, and there's a ton of them. So cilia are always very short, and they're very numerous, and they kind of wave back and forth. So cilia can either help a cell move around, or more often in our bodies, they actually wave back and forth and create like a teeny tiny current that goes over the top of them. So inside of your trachea, which leads to your lungs, you have cilia covering all of that tissue inside your trachea. And what this does is it helps catch dust particles and virus particles before they get into the lungs. And then the cilia beat and create a little current that's going to put all that dust and dirt up back towards your throat, and then you swallow it without even knowing it. Flagella are really long whip-like projections. So a flagella, so you can see here is a sperm cell, and this is the one large flagellum. Flagella is plural. So the only cells in humans that have this are sperm, and these kind of whip back and forth and project the sperm forward. A pseudopod. So the prefix pseudo means fake or false. And then pod means foot. So pseudopod literally means fake foot. And these are pseudopods. They can be long and skinny. They can be kind of fat and bulbousy. What they are is they just send extensions out, and then the cytoplasm fills these in. And these extensions can be used in absorbing things. So we have cells that go throughout our body called white blood cells, and they actually eat other invading organelles, right? And or other invading cells. So here's a white blood cell, and it's eating these bacteria cells. And it does this with its pseudopods. It surrounds them, and then it closes off, and then it brings it into its body. So take a moment and reflect on the structure of the plasma membrane, and what does it mean to be semi-permeable?